Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome back to the live studios here at Radha Lane with Bhakta Morgan, the son of Bhakta Robert. He's doing fantastic, hanging in there, hearing every day. He's on vacation. Got to do something, you know. Hare Krishna. Welcome to everyone out there in cyberspace. Very nice to see you again, and so happy to be with you. All right, onward in our intense reading of the Bhagavad-gita as it is, the basics of Krishna consciousness. If we hear and imbibe, hear attentively, eagerly, and imbibe these instructions and even try to incorporate them into our character and into our daily lives, then we will very soon advance in Krishna consciousness to the point where we get a real taste, and then Hare Krishna. So let's hear Srila Prabhupada's Mangalacharana prayers for the Bhagavad-gita as it is. He created auspicious atmosphere all over the world by doing this Mangalacharana prayers. They go like this: Om Jnana Timiran Dasya Jnanan Jana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sabadantikam. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who is established within this material world, the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangscha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master and unto the feet of all Vaishnavas. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami, along with his elder brother Sanatana Goswami, as well as Raghunath Das and Raghunath Bhatta, Gopal Bhatta, and Srila Jiva Goswami. I offer my respectful obeisances to Lord Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, along with Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar, Shivasa, and other associates. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani and Sri Krishna, along with their associates, Sri Lalita and Vishaka. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindho, Dinabandho Jagatpate, Gopisha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namostute. O my dear Krishna, ocean of mercy, you are the friend of the distressed and the source of creation. You are the master of the cowherd men and the lover of the gopis, especially Srimati Radharani. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Rishabhanu Sute Divi, Pranamami Hari Priye. I offer my respects to Radharani, whose bodily complexion is like molten gold, and who is the queen of Vrindavan. You are the daughter of King Vrishabhanu, and you are very dear to Lord Krishna. Vanchakalpataru vyascha kripasindhu bhya patitanam pavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, just like desire trees, and they are full of compassion for the fallen souls. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. I offer my obeisances to Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasa, and others, all others, in the line of devotion. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, yesterday we read for the second time through, consecutively, in 2 days, the first part of the 13th chapter. And yesterday we ended on those famous verses, 8 to 12, which describe what knowledge is. And the wonderful purport, Hare Krishna, Dr. G, Guru Bhakti Ji. So nice to see you. You must be busy, so much busy during all the festival and everything. Anyway, so we heard that very wonderful analysis by Prabhupada in his long purport of all the different items of knowledge and how they reflect into our daily lives. It would do us well to read them again and again, study them, and study our own character, and try to emulate that knowledge. Okay, so now we are on text 13, chapter 13, text 13. Yeyam yat-tat prabhakshami yad yatvam-rita ashnute anadi matparam brahma sat-tat nasatan nasaruchyate. I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. Purport: the Lord has explained the field of activities and the knower of the field. He has also explained the process of knowing the knower of the field of activities. Now he begins to explain the knowable, first the soul and then the supersoul. By knowledge of the knower, both the soul and the supersoul, one can relish the nectar of life. As explained in the second chapter, the living entity is eternal. This is also confirmed here. There is no specific date at which the jiva was born, nor can anyone trace out the history of the jivatma's manifestation from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, it is beginningless. The Vedic literature confirms this. Najayate mriyate vipaschit Kata Upanishad 1-18. The knower of the body is never born and never dies, and he is full of knowledge. The Supreme Lord as the Supersoul is also stated in the Vedic literature, Shvetashvatara Upanishad, to be Pradhana Chetragya Patir Guneshaha, the chief knower of the body and the master of the three modes of material nature. In the Smriti it is said, Dasa Bhuto Harer Eva Nanyas Yaiva Kadachana. The living entities are eternally in the service of the Supreme Lord. This is also confirmed by Lord Chaitanya in his teachings. Therefore, the description of Brahman mentioned in this verse is in relation to the individual soul. And when the word Brahman is applied to the living entity, it is to be understood that he is Vijnana Brahma, as opposed to Ananda Brahma. Ananda Brahma is the Supreme Brahman, personality of Godhead. Text 14. Sarvatak panipadam tat sarvato chichido mukham sarvatak shutima loke sarvam avrityatishthati. Translation: everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads, and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way the Supersoul exists, pervading everything. Purport: as the sun exists, diffusing its unlimited rays so does the Supersoul, or Supreme Personality of Godhead. He exists in his all-pervading form, and in him exist all the individual living entities, beginning from the first great teacher, Brahma, down to the small ants. There are unlimited heads, legs, hands, and eyes, and unlimited living entities. All are existing in and on the Supersoul. Therefore, the Supersoul is all-pervading. The individual soul, however, cannot say that he has hands, legs, and eyes everywhere. That is not possible. If he thinks that under ignorance he is not conscious that his hands and legs are diffused all over, but when he attains to proper knowledge, he will come to that stage, his thinking is contradictory. This means that the individual soul, having become conditioned by material nature, is not supreme. The supreme is different from the individual soul. The supreme soul can extend his hand without limit. The individual soul cannot. In Bhagavad-gita, the Lord says that if anyone offers him a flower or a fruit or a little water, he accepts it. If the Lord is a far distance away, how can he accept things? This is the omnipotence of the Lord. Even though he is situated in his own abode, far, far away from earth, he can extend his hand to accept what everyone offers, what anyone offers. That is his potency. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said, Goloka eva nivasat akilatma bhuta. Although he is always engaged in pastimes in his transcendental planet, he is all-pervading. The individual soul cannot claim that he is all-pervading. Therefore, this verse describes the Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead, not the individual soul. Text 15. Sarvindriya guna bhasam sarvindriya vivarjitam asaktam sarvabrichchaiva nirgunam gunabhoktricha. The Supersoul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time, he is the master of all the modes of material nature. Purport. The Supreme Lord, although the source of all the senses of the living entities, doesn't have material senses like they have. Actually, the living entities have spiritual senses, but in conditioned life, they are covered with the material elements, and therefore the sense activities are exhibited through matter. The Supreme Lord's senses are not so covered. His senses are transcendental, and are therefore called nirguna. Guna means the material modes, but his senses are without material covering. It should be understood that his senses are not exactly like ours. Although he is the source of all our sensory activities, he has his transcendental senses, which are uncontaminated. This is very nicely explained in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, in the verse, Apani pado javano grihita. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no hands, which are materially contaminated, but he has his hands and accepts whatever sacrifice is offered to him. That is the distinction between the conditioned soul and the Supersoul. He has no material eyes, but he has eyes. Otherwise, how could he see? He sees everything, past, present, and future. He lives within the heart of the living being, and he knows what we have done in the past, what we are doing now, and what is awaiting us in the future. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad-gita. He knows everything, but no one knows him. It is said that the Supreme Lord has no legs like us, but he can travel throughout space, because he has spiritual legs. In other words, the Lord is not impersonal. He has his eyes, legs, hands, and everything else. And because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we also have these things. But his hands, legs, eyes, and senses are not contaminated by material nature. Bhagavad-gita also confirms that when the Lord appears, He appears as he is by his internal potency. He is not contaminated by the material energy, because he is the Lord of material energy. In the Vedic literature, we find that his whole embodiment is spiritual. He has his eternal form, called Satchidananda Vigraha. He is full of opulence. He is the proprietor of all wealth and the owner of all energy. He is the most intelligent and is full of knowledge. These are some of the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the maintainer of all living entities and the witness of all activity. As far as we can understand from Vedic literature, the Supreme Lord is always transcendental. Although we do not see his head, face, hands, or legs, he has them. And when we are elevated to the transcendental situation, we can see the Lord's form. Due to materially contaminated senses, we cannot see his form. Therefore, the impersonalists, who are still materially affected, cannot understand the personality of Godhead. Text 16. Bahir antas chabhutanam acharam charamevacha sukshmatvat tadavigyayam durastam chantike chatat. The Supreme Truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-moving. Because he is subtle, he is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. Purport. In the Vedic literature, we understand that Narayana, the Supreme Person, is residing both outside and inside of every living entity. He is present in both the spiritual and material worlds. Although he is far, far away, still he is near to us. These are the statements of Vedic literature. Asino duram brajati shayano yati sarvaha. Kanta Upanishad. And because he is always engaged in transcendental bliss, we cannot understand how he is enjoying his full opulence. We cannot see or understand with these material senses. Therefore, in the Vedic language, it is said that to understand him, our material mind and senses cannot act. But one who has purified his mind and senses by practicing Krishna consciousness in devotional service can see him constantly. It is confirmed in Brahma Samhita that the devotee who has developed love for the Supreme God can see him always, without cessation. And it is confirmed in Bhagavad-gita that he can be seen and understood only by devotional service. Bhaktya tvananyaya shakyaha. Text 17. Avibhaktam chabhuteshu vibhaktam ivachastitam bhutta bhartri chataj geyam grasishnu prabhavishnucha. Although the Supersoul appears to be divided among all beings, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Although he is the maintainer of every living entity, it is to be understood that he devours and develops all. Purport. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart as the Supersoul. Does this mean that he has become divided? No. Actually, he is one. The example is given of the sun. The sun at the meridian is situated in its place. But if one goes for 5,000 miles in all directions and asks, where is the sun? Everyone will say that it is shining on his head. In the Vedic literature, this example is given to show that although he is undivided, he is situated as if divided. Also, it is said in Vedic literature that one Vishnu is present everywhere by his omnipotence. Just as the sun appears in many places to many persons, and the Supreme Lord, although the maintainer of every living entity, devours everything at the time of annihilation. This was confirmed in the 11th chapter, when the Lord said that he had come to devour all the warriors assembled at Kurukshetra. He also mentioned that in the form of time, he devours also. He is the annihilator, the killer of all. When there is creation, he develops all from their original state, and at the time of annihilation, he devours them. The Vedic hymns confirm the fact that he is the origin of all living entities and the rest of all. After creation, everything rests in his omnipotence, and after annihilation, everything again returns to rest in him. These are the confirmations of Vedic hymns. Yatova imani bhutani jayante, yena jatani jivanti, yat prayantiyabhisang vishanti, tad brahma tad vijigasasva. Taittiriya Upanishad. Text 18. Jyotisham apitaj jyotis tamasak padam uchate jnanam gyeyam jnanagamyam Riddhi sarvasya vishtitam. He is the source of light in all luminous objects. He is beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. He is knowledge. He is the object of knowledge, and he is the goal of knowledge. He is situated in everyone's heart. Purport. The Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the source of light in all luminous objects, like the sun, moon, and stars. In the Vedic literature, we find that in the spiritual kingdom, there is no need of sun or moon, because the effulgence of the Supreme Lord is there. In the material world, that Brahma-jyoti, the Lord's spiritual effulgence, is covered by the Mahat Tattva, the material elements. Therefore, in this material world, we require the assistance of sun, moon, electricity, etc. for light. But in the spiritual world, there is no need of such things. It is clearly stated in the Vedic literature that because of his luminous effulgence, everything is illuminated. It is clear, therefore, that his situation is not in the material world. He is situated in the spiritual world, which is far, far away in the spiritual sky. That is also confirmed in the Vedic literature. Aditya varnam tamasak parastat. Shvetashvatara Upanishad. He is just like the sun, eternally luminous, but he is far, far above the darkness of this material world. His knowledge is transcendental. The Vedic literature confirms that Brahman is concentrated, transcendental knowledge. To one who is anxious to be transferred to that spiritual world, knowledge is given by the Supreme Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart. One Vedic mantra, Shvetashvatara Upanishad, says, Tam ha devam atma buddhi prakasham mamukshur vai sharanam aham prapadye. One must surrender under the Supreme Personality of Godhead if he at all wants liberation. As far as the goal of ultimate knowledge is concerned, it is also confirmed in Vedic literature. Tam eva vidit vati mrityumeti. Only by knowing him can one surpass the boundary of birth and death. Shvetashvatara Upanishad. He is situated in everyone's heart as the Supreme Controller. The Supreme has legs and hands distributed everywhere, and he cannot be said, this cannot be said of the individual soul. Therefore, that there are two knowers of the field of activity, the individual soul and the Supersoul, must be admitted. One's hands and legs are distributed locally, but Krishna's hands and legs are distributed everywhere. This is confirmed in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Sarvasya Prabhum Ishanam Sarvasya Sharanam Brihat. That Supreme Personality of Godhead's Supersoul is the Prabhu, or Master of all living entities. Therefore, he is the ultimate shelter of all living entities. So there is no denying the fact that the Supreme Supersoul and the individual soul are always different. Text 19. Iti chitram tata jnanam Gyeyam choktam samasataha mad bhakta etad vigyaya mad bhava yopapadyate. Thus, the field of activities, the body, knowledge, and the knowable have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. Purport. The Lord is described in summary the body, knowledge, and the knowable. This knowledge is of three things: the knower and the knowable and the process of knowledge. Perfect knowledge can be understood by the unalloyed devotees of the Lord directly. Others are unable to understand. The monists say that at the ultimate stage, these three items become one. But the devotees do not accept this. Knowledge and development of knowledge mean understanding oneself in Krishna consciousness. We are being led by material consciousness, but as soon as we transfer our all consciousness to Krishna's activities and realize that Krishna is everything, then we attain real knowledge. In other words, knowledge is nothing but the preliminary stage of understanding devotional service perfectly. In the 15th chapter, this will be very clearly explained. Now, to summarize, one may understand that verse 6 and 7, beginning with Mahabhutani, and continuing through Chaitana Dritihi, analyze the material elements and certain manifestations of the symptoms of life. Symptoms of what?
Symptoms of life.
These combine to form the body, or the field of activities. And verses 8 through 12, from Amanitvam through Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam, describe the process of knowledge for understanding both types of knower of the field of activities, namely the soul and the supersoul. Then verses 13 through 18, beginning from Anadi Matparam, continuing through Hridisarvasya Vishtitam, describe the soul and the Supreme Lord, or the Supersoul. Thus, three items have been described: the field of activity, the body, the process of understanding, and both the soul and the Supersoul. It is especially described here that only the unalloyed devotees of the Lord can understand these three items clearly. So for these devotees, Bhagavad-gita is fully useful. It is they who can attain the supreme goal, the nature of the Supreme Lord, Krishna. In other words, only devotees and not others can understand Bhagavad-gita and derive the desired result. Text 20. Prakritim purusham chaiva vidyanadi ubhavapi vikarangs chagunangs chaiva vidi prakriti sambhavan. Material nature and the living entities should be understood to be beginningless. Their transformations and the modes of matter are products of material nature. Purport. By the knowledge given in this chapter, one can understand the body, the field of activities, and the knowers of the body, both the individual soul and the supersoul. You know, just see how Prabhupada, he's repeating the same things over and over again, but in a little different way, little different way, little different way. And just by hearing it, and continuously hearing it again and again, it becomes fixed. And then we can understand and see it properly. The body is the field of activity and is composed of material nature. The individual soul that is embodied and enjoying the activities of the body is the Purusha, or the living entity. And he is one knower, and the other is the Supersoul. Of course, it is to be understood that both the Supersoul and the individual entity are different manifestations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The living entity is in the category of his energy, and the Supersoul is in the category of his personal expansion. both material nature and the living entity are eternal. That is to say, that they existed before the creation. The material manifestation is from the energy of the Supreme Lord, and so also are the living entities and material nature. Let me see. The material manifestation is from the energy of the Supreme Lord, and so also are the living entities. But the living entities are of the superior nature. Both the living entities and material nature existed before this cosmos was manifested. Material nature was absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Mahavishnu, and when it was required, it was manifested by the agency of Mahatattva. Similarly, the living entities are also in Him, and because they are conditioned, they are averse to serving the Supreme Lord. Thus, they are not allowed to enter into the spiritual sky. But with the coming forth of material nature, these living entities are again given a chance to act in the material world and prepare themselves to enter into the spiritual world. That is the mystery of this material creation. Actually, the living entity is originally the spiritual part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. But due to his rebellious nature, he is conditioned within material nature. It really does not matter how these living entities or superior entities of the Supreme Lord have come into contact with material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead knows, however, how and why this actually took place. In the scriptures, the Lord says that those attracted by this material nature are undergoing a hard struggle for existence. But we should know it with certainty from the descriptions of these few verses that all transformations and influences of material nature by the three modes are also productions of material nature. All transformations and variety in respect to living entities are due to the body. As far as spirit is concerned, living entities are all the same. Text 21. Karya karanakartvitve hetu prakriti uchate purusak sugadukanam poktritve heter uchate. Nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments of this world. It's going off?
Good, no.
It's okay?
Yeah.
Purport, maybe the weather a little bit?
No, it's not cutting out.
Oh, good.
Just some comments.
Oh, you're laughing at comments. Okay. Translation, again. Nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. Purport, the different manifestations of body and senses among the living entities are due to material nature. There are 8,400,000 different species of life, and these varieties are creations of the material nature. They arise from the different sensual pleasures of the living entity, who thus desires to live in this body or that. When he is put into different bodies, he enjoys different kinds of happiness and distress. His material happiness and distress are due to his body, not to himself as he is. In his original state, there is no doubt of enjoyment. Therefore, that is his real state. Because of the desire to lord it over material nature, he is in the material world. In the spiritual world, there is no such thing. The spiritual world is pure, but in the material world, everyone is struggling hard to acquire different kinds of pleasures for the body. It might be more clear to state that this body is the effect of the senses. The senses are instruments for gratifying desire. Now, the sum total body and instrument senses are offered by material nature. And as it will be clear in the next verse, the living entity is blessed or damned with circumstances according to his past desire and activity. According to one's desires and activities, material nature places one in various residential quarters. The being himself is the cause of his attaining such residential quarters and his attendant enjoyment or suffering. Once placed in some particular kind of body, he comes under the control of nature because the body, being matter, acts according to the laws of nature. At that time, the living entity has no power to change that law. Suppose an entity is put into the body of a dog. As soon as he is put into the body of a dog, he must act like a dog. He cannot act otherwise. And if the living entity is put into the body of a hog, then he is forced to eat stool and act like a hog. Similarly, if the living entity is put into the body of a demigod, he must act according to his body. This is the law of nature. But in all circumstances, the Supersoul is with the individual soul. That is explained in the Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad, as follows. Dva Suparna Yayuja Sakaya. The Supreme Lord is so kind upon the living entity that he always accompanies the individual soul and in all circumstances is present as the Supersoul or Paramatma. Text 22. Purushat Prakritisto hi bhunkte Prakritijan gunan karanam gunasangosya sarasajnoni janmasu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. Purport. This verse is very important for an understanding of how the living entities transmigrate from one body to another. It is explained in the second chapter that the living entity is transmigrating from one body to another, just as one changes dress. This change of dress is due to his attachment to material existence. As long as he is captivated by this false manifestation, he has to continue transmigrating from one body to another. Due to his desire to lord it over material nature, he is put into such undesirable circumstances. Under the influence of material desire, the entity is born sometimes as a demigod, sometimes a man, sometimes as a beast, as a bird, as a worm, as an aquatic, as a saintly man, as a bug. This is going on. And in all cases, the living entity thinks himself to be the master of his circumstances, yet he is under the influence of material nature. How he is put into such different bodies is explained here. It is due to association with the different modes of nature. One has to rise, therefore, above the three material modes and become situated in the transcendental position. That is called Krishna consciousness. Unless one is situated in Krishna consciousness, his material consciousness will oblige him to transfer from one body to another because he has material desires since time immemorial. But he has to change that conception. That change can be effected only by hearing from authoritative sources. The best example is here. Arjuna is hearing the science of God from Krishna. The living entity, if he submits to this hearing process, will lose his long-cherished desire to dominate material nature, and gradually and proportionately, as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spiritual happiness. In a Vedic mantra it is said that as he becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he proportionately relishes his eternal blissful life. Text 23. Chanumanta cha bharta bhokta maheshwaraha paramat mitichap yukto dehismin purushak paraha. Yet in this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the Supreme Proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter, and who is known as the Supersoul. Purport. It is stated here that the Supersoul, who was always with the individual soul, is the representation of the Supreme Lord. He is not an ordinary living entity. Because the monist philosophers take the knower of the body to be one, they think there is no difference between the Supersoul and the individual soul. To clarify this, the Lord says that He is represented as the Paramatma in every body. He is different from the individual soul. He is para, transcendental. The individual soul enjoys the activities of a particular field, but the Supersoul is present not as a finite enjoyer, nor as one taking part in bodily activities, but as the witness, overseer, permitter, and supreme enjoyer. His name is Paramatma, not Atma, and He is transcendental. It is distinctly clear that the Atma and Paramatma are different. The Supersoul, the Paramatma, has legs and hands everywhere, but the individual soul does not. And because the Paramatma is the Supreme Lord, He is present within to sanction the individual soul's desiring material enjoyment. Without the sanction of the Supreme Soul, the individual soul cannot do anything. The individual is bhukta, or the sustained, and the Lord is bhokta, or the maintainer. There are innumerable living entities, and He is staying in them as a friend. The fact is that every individual living entity is eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and both of them are very intimately related as friends. But the living entity has the tendency to reject the sanction of the Supreme Lord and act independently in an attempt to dominate nature. And because he has this tendency, he is called the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord. The living entity can be situated either in the material energy or in the spiritual energy. As long as he is conditioned by the material energy, the Supreme Lord, as his friend, the Supersoul, stays with him just to get him to return to the spiritual energy. The Lord is always eager to take him back to the spiritual energy, but due to his minute independence, the individual entity is continually rejecting the association of spiritual light. This misuse of independence is the cause of his material strife in the conditioned nature. The Lord, therefore, is always giving instruction from within and from without. From without, he gives instructions as stated in Bhagavad-gita. And from within, he tries to convince the living entity that his activities in the material field are not conducive to real happiness. Just give it up and turn your faith toward me. Then you will be happy, he says. Thus, the intelligent person who places his faith in the Paramatma, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, begins to advance toward a blissful, eternal life of knowledge. Text 24. Ya evam vedipurusham prakritim jagunai saha sarvata vartamanopi nasabhuyo vijayate. One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present position. Purport. Clear understanding of the material nature, the Supersoul, the individual soul, and their interrelation makes one eligible to become liberated and turn to the spiritual atmosphere without being forced to return to this material nature. This is the result of knowledge. The purpose of knowledge is to understand distinctly that the living entity has by chance fallen into this material existence. By his personal endeavor, in association with authorities, saintly persons, and his spiritual master, he has to understand his position and then revert to spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness by understanding Bhagavad-gita as it is explained by this personality of Godhead. Then it is certain that he will never come again into this material existence. He will be transferred into the spiritual world for a blissful eternal life of knowledge. 25. Jnaninat manipashyanti kechit atmanam atmana anye sankyena yogena karma yogena chapare. Some perceive the Supersoul within themselves through meditation, others through the cultivation of knowledge, and still others through working without fruitive desires. Purport. The Lord informs Arjuna that the conditioned souls can be divided into two classes as far as man's search for self-realization is concerned. Those who are atheists, agnostics, and skeptics are beyond the sense of spiritual understanding. But there are others who are faithful in their understanding of spiritual life, and they are called introspective devotees, philosophers, and workers who have renounced fruitive results. Those who always try to establish the doctrine of monism are also counted among the atheists and agnostics. In other words, only the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are best situated in spiritual understanding because they understand that beyond this material nature are the spiritual world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is expanded as the Paramatma, the Supersoul in everyone, the all-pervading Godhead. Of course, there are those who try to understand the Supreme Absolute Truth by cultivation of knowledge, and they can be counted in the class of the faithful. The Sankhya philosophers analyze this material world into 24 elements, and they place the individual soul as the 25th item. When they are able to understand the nature of the individual soul to be transcendental to the material elements, they are able to understand also that above the individual soul there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the 26th element. Thus, gradually they also come to the standard of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Those who work without fruitive results are also perfect in their attitude. They are given a chance to advance to the platform of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Here it is stated that there are some people who are pure in consciousness and who try to find out the Supersoul by meditation, and when they discover the Supersoul within themselves, they become transcendentally situated. Similarly, there are others who also try to understand the Supreme Soul by cultivation of knowledge. And there are others who cultivate the Hatha Yoga system and who try to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by childish activities. Oh, how can we continue without you? We'll struggle along. We'll struggle along. Hare Krishna. Haribo. Text 26. Anye tvevam ajanantak shutvanyebhya upasate tipicha titarantyeva mrityum shruti parayanaha. Again, there are those who, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Person upon hearing about Him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. Purport. This verse is particularly applicable to modern society, because in modern society there's practically no education in spiritual matters. Some of the people may appear to be atheistic or agnostic or philosophical, but actually there is no knowledge of philosophy. As for the common man, if he is a good soul, then there's a chance for advancement by hearing. This hearing process is very important. Lord Chaitanya, who preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world, gave great stress to hearing because of the common man. Lord Chaitanya, who preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world, gave great stress to hearing, because if the common man simply hears from authoritative sources, he can progress, especially, according to Lord Chaitanya, if he hears the transcendental vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It is stated, therefore, that all men should take advantage of hearing from realized souls and gradually become able to understand everything. The worship of the Supreme Lord will then undoubtedly take place. Lord Chaitanya has said that in this age, no one needs to change his position, but one should give up the endeavor to understand the absolute truth by speculative reasoning. One should learn to become the servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Lord. If one is fortunate enough to take shelter of a pure devotee, hear from him about self-realization, and follow in his footsteps, one will gradually be elevated to the position of a pure devotee. In this verse particularly, the process of hearing is strongly recommended, and this is very appropriate. Although the common man is often not as capable as so-called philosophers, faithful hearing from an authoritative person will help one transcend this material existence and go back to Godhead, back to home. Text 27. Yavat sanjayate kinchit satvam stavarajangamam chetra sangyogat tadvidi paradarshava. O chief of the Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field. Purport. Both material nature and the living entity, which were existing before the creation of the cosmos, are explained in this verse. Whatever is created is but a combination of the living entity and material nature. There are many manifestations like trees, mountains, and hills, which are not moving, and there are many existences which are moving, and all of them are but combinations of material nature and the superior nature, the living entity. Without the touch of the superior nature, the living entity, nothing can grow. The relationship between material nature and spiritual nature is eternally going on, and this combination is effected by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, he is the controller of both the superior and inferior natures. The material nature is created by him, and the superior nature is placed in this material nature, and thus all these activities and manifestations take place. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram vinashyat vavinashyantam yak pashati sapashyati. One who sees the Supersoul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and who understands that neither the soul nor the Supersoul within the destructible body is ever destroyed, actually sees. Purport. Anyone who by good association can see three things combined together: the body, the proprietor of the body, or the individual soul, and the friend of the individual soul, is actually in knowledge. Unless one has the association of a real knower of spiritual subjects, one cannot see these three things. Those who do not have such association are ignorant. They simply see the body and they think that when the body is destroyed, everything is finished. But actually, it is not so. After the destruction of the body, both the soul and the Supersoul exist. They go on eternally in many various moving and non-moving forms. The Sanskrit word Parameshwara is sometimes translated as the individual soul, because the soul is the master of the body, and after the destruction of the body, he transfers to another form. In that way, he is master. But there are others who interpret this Parameshwara to be the Supersoul. In either case, both the Supersoul and the individual soul continue. They are not destroyed. One who can see in this way can actually see what is happening. Text 29. Samam pashyan hisarvatra samavashtitamishwaram na hinasyat manatmanam tato yati padam gatim. One who sees the Supersoul equally present everywhere in every living being does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus he approaches the transcendental destination. Purport. The living entity, by accepting his material existence, has become situated differently than in his spiritual existence. But if one understands that the Supreme is situated in his Paramatma manifestation everywhere, that is, if one can see the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in every living entity, every living thing, he does not degrade himself by a destructive mentality, and he therefore gradually advances to the spiritual world. The mind is generally addicted to sense-gratifying processes, but when the mind turns to the Supersoul, one becomes advanced in spiritual understanding. Text 30. Prakrityaiva chikarmani kriyamanani sarvashaha yakpishati tatatmanam akartadam sapashyati. One who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees. Purport. The body is made by material nature under the direction of the Supersoul, and whatever activities are going on in respect to one's body are not his doing. Whatever one is supposed to do, either for happiness or for distress, one is forced to do because of the bodily constitution. The self, however, is outside all these bodily activities. This body is given according to one's past desires. To fulfill desires, one is given the body with which he acts accordingly. Practically speaking, the body is a machine designed by the Supreme Lord to fulfill desires. Because of desires, one is put into difficult circumstances, or to suffer or to enjoy. This transcendental vision of the living entity, when developed, makes one separate from bodily activities. One who has such a vision is an actual seer. Text 31. Yada bhuta pritag bhavam ekastam anupashyati tatta eva chavishtaram brahmasampadhyate tada. When a sensible man ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies and sees how beings are expanded everywhere, he attains to the Brahman conception. Purport. When one can see that the various bodies of living entities arise due to the different desires of the individual soul and do not actually belong to the soul itself, one actually sees. In the material conception of life, we find someone a demigod, someone a human being, a cat, a dog, etc. This is material vision, not actual vision. This material differentiation is due to a material conception of life. After the destruction of the material body, the spirit soul is one. The spirit soul due to contact with material nature, gets different types of bodies. When one can see this, he attains spiritual vision. Thus, being freed from differentiations like man, animal, big, low, etc., one becomes purified in his consciousness and able to develop Krishna consciousness in his spiritual identity. How he then sees things will be explained in the next verse. Anaditvan nirgunatvat paramat mayamavyayaha sharirastopi kaunteya na karoti na lipyate. Those with the vision of eternity can see that the imperishable soul is transcendental, eternal, and beyond the modes of nature. Despite contact with the material body, O Arjuna, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled. Purport. A living entity appears to be born because of the birth of the material body, but actually the living entity is eternal. He is not born, and in spite of his being situated in a material body, he is transcendental and eternal. Thus he cannot be destroyed. By nature, he is full of bliss. He does not engage himself in any material activities. Therefore, the activities performed due to his contact with material bodies do not entangle him. Text 33. Yatha sarvagatam saukshman akasham nopadipyate sarvatra vastito dehe tatatma nopadipyate. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all-pervading. Similarly, the soul situated in Brahman vision does not mix with the body, though situated in that body. Purport. The air enters into water, mud, stool, and whatever else there is. Still, it does not mix with anything. Similarly, the living entity, even though situated in varieties of bodies, is aloof from them due to his subtle nature. Therefore, it is impossible to see with the material eyes how the living entity is in contact with this body and how he is out of it after the destruction of the body. No one in science can ascertain this. Text 34. Yata prakashayat jeka krishnam lokamimam ravihi Chaitram Chaitri Tata Krishnam Prakashayati Bharata. O Bharat, son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness. Purport. There are various theories regarding consciousness. Here in Bhagavad-gita, the example of the sun and the sunshine is given. As the sun is situated in one place, but is illuminating the whole universe, so a small particle of spirit soul, although situated in the heart of this body, is illuminating the whole body by consciousness. Thus, consciousness is the proof of the presence of the soul, as sunshine or light is the proof of the presence of the sun. When the soul is present in the body, there is consciousness all over the body. And as soon as the soul is passed from the body, there is no more consciousness. This can be easily understood by any intelligent man. Therefore, consciousness is not a product of the combinations of matter. It is the symptom of the living entity. It's so far out, isn't it? Every time a person dies, what do you say?
They're gone.
No, he passed away.
Yeah.
He passed away.
But they're still there.
Everyone, all over the world, they say he passed away. Right here it says, when the soul is present in the body, there is consciousness all over the body. And as soon as the soul has passed from the body, there is no more consciousness. This can be easily understood by any intelligent man. Therefore, consciousness is not a product of the combinations of matter. It is the symptom of a living entity. The consciousness of a living entity although qualitatively one with the Supreme Consciousness, is not supreme. Because the consciousness of one particular body does not share that of another body. But the Supersoul, which is situated in all bodies as the friend of the individual soul, is conscious of all bodies. That is the difference between Supreme Consciousness and individual consciousness. Text 35. Chitragyayorevam antaram jnana chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye vidur yanti te param. Those who see with eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body, and can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in material nature, attain to the supreme goal. Purport. The purport of this 13th chapter is that one should know the distinction between the body, the owner of the body, and the Supersoul. One should recognize the process of liberation as described in verses 8 through 12. Then one can go on to the supreme destination. A faithful person should at first have some good association to hear of God, and thus gradually become enlightened. If one accepts a spiritual master, one can learn to distinguish between matter and spirit, and that becomes the stepping stone for further spiritual realization. A spiritual master, by various instructions, teaches his students to get free from the material concept of life. For instance, in Bhagavad-gita, we find Krishna instructing Arjuna to free him from materialistic considerations. One can understand that this body is matter. It can be analyzed with its 24 elements. The body is the gross manifestation, and the subtle manifestation is the mind and psychological effects. And the symptoms of life are the interaction of these three features. But over and above this, there is the soul, and there is also the Supersoul. The soul and the Supersoul are two. This material world is working by the conjunction of the soul and the 24 material elements. One who can see the constitution of the whole material manifestation as this combination of the soul and material elements, and can also see the situation of the Supersoul, becomes eligible for transfer to the spiritual world. These things are meant for contemplation and for realization, and one should have a complete understanding of this chapter with the help of a spiritual master. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 13th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam in the matter of nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness. Hare Krishna. So, time for reflections.
I like how he said right here, the soul and the super soul are two. You don't hear that. You
always hear it one, yeah.
The soul is one. We are one. Yes.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
So, I always felt that God was very very personal, I don't know if to say like a friend, but metaphorically speaking. But I've also had experiences that are also very impersonal. So, but I guess it's a little bit confusing because I'm understanding that, it says here that we have to, or in order to progress, we have to have a personal relationship with God, but does that look a certain way, or am I just experiencing myself a little bit different?
No, you're experiencing something, but you're experiencing it partially.
Okay.
Like when you come into a very beautiful city, everything's lined up nicely, parks and gardens and beautiful buildings and structured, and of course nowadays it's a mess, but there are such things as beautiful cities still. And you can appreciate, the mayor of this city, very nice, must be very nice, or the person in charge or the persons in charge of the city. So that's a level of appreciation, but it's an impersonal impression or an impersonal appreciation. But when and it's an appreciation. But if you, for somehow or other, got to go into the office of the actual mayor or the person who was actually responsible for doing all that, and you could shake hands and say thank you very much, and have a person, it's much more satisfying. So that's the point. So you may have an impersonal experience, and it may be true, but it's not as satisfying as the personal experience of God.
So
because we're persons.
Yeah. So
That's the whole purpose of this chapter, to explain to us how we're persons and the material energy is impersonal, and we cannot therefore be completely happy.
Yeah, I believe that. So I'm just trying to understand it. Like, so let's say we have a spiritual master. Can you tell me his experiences of what is a personal relationship with Krishna?
That's for you. That's for you. That's for you to realize. That's for you to realize. You see that within, as you assimilate the knowledge, then you see for yourself. It's not that someone else sees for you.
No, yeah, I get it, but I just...
Like you go to an optometrist and your eyes can't see clearly,
Yeah.
and then he gives you glasses and you look through the glasses and then you see clearly. It's not that the optometrist sees for you clearly. You have to see yourself.
Oh, I believe, yeah.
You have to see yourself clearly through submitting to the optometrist and getting the glasses that allow you to see clearly. But you see clearly.
Yeah.
So until you get that knowledge, until you're actually looking through that knowledge, then you can't see clearly.
I agree. I don't see clearly at all. But I'm just kind of curious because I don't understand what...
Then you have to hear, and as it says here in the last part of the chapter, and try to understand, and keep trying to understand until you do understand.
Okay.
You have to keep inquiring, you have to keep hearing, you have to be trying to understand, you have to take the activities that help us purify our senses and our mind. We have to learn to act in a way that helps us to see properly, and then eventually, gradually, we see. You can't see immediately.
Okay.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
Not for anyone.
Like I have experiences where I see lights and I see angels sometimes, but I know that's not God because God is more than that. So I just don't. Okay, I just let it go and just.
It's not a matter. It's not a matter. It's not a matter of letting it go.
I mean,
It's a matter of having an experience that gives you some insight that there's something more to it, and then following through and keeping inquiring, and the Supersoul obviously is guiding you. Otherwise, why you're here? If you have this tendency, if you've had these experiences that are not personal yet, but they're higher than the experience of an ordinary person, but you're still going forward, you're still feeling confused or not satisfied, then you haven't reached it yet.
Yeah.
But when you've actually reached the goal, then you'll be satisfied. But that doesn't mean that you just sit there like a log, okay, now or like a light and just beam and that's it. No, there are activities in spiritual life, in the spiritual world, and those activities bring a state of happiness that just keeps on increasing and increasing and increasing. So one is completely satisfied, but more than completely satisfied, one becomes more and more satisfied, and it never stops. The satisfaction never stops. And sometimes Krishna will come in front of you, and then he'll go away, and you'll go, oh, no. And so there's some feeling of, incompleteness, but it's not material, it's spiritual, and it just increases the affection, it increases the knowledge, it increases. And then when the next time you see Krishna, then it's like, ever increasing. That's the difference between spiritual existence and material existence, part of the difference.
So part of it, you said that God is form, so people will experience a person.
God is form, and He's unformed, and He's everything.
Okay.
But He's the source of everything.
Sorry, I'm so curious.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know
Because
how to ask
I've had
that.
experiences where I've felt the same thing, but instead of just looking at something and saying, oh, I feel this way, that's God, try maybe focusing more on the actual feeling. Because you can feel God everywhere. You can look at a tree and feel God's presence.
You can't understand just by feeling with the material mind, because the material mind and senses are limited. You have to hear, and you have to, by hearing, you have to wake up the spiritual consciousness, and then you look, and then you see, not feel, you see for yourself the reality.
So what is the difference between knowledge and then gnosis, or how do they kind of like, are they Gnostics, the people that have these, they're the seers that are explained in this book, are they experiencing God through
They're experiencing God's energy.
Okay. So is
Some of them
spiritual
are
knowledge-
experiencing God. You can't make generalizations.
Okay.
Some people may be realized. But the point is, you ask about knowledge.
Mhm.
So here, knowledge is explained. Do you remember? Were you here?
Yeah.
Yeah?
But I
So
try
this
to
is knowledge.
understand.
This is knowledge. It's not feeling. Feeling's the goal. The goal is transcendental feeling. The goal is spiritual feeling. But that spiritual feeling comes from having personal contact with God, with the personality of Godhead. Then the happiness becomes complete. Until then, one is searching. You keep searching and you keep searching until you find the absolute truth. When you find the absolute truth, then your searching stops. And then you can relish.
Is it because we won't feel hungry anymore for
No
God,
hunger.
'cause you'll be one with God, or what?
Huh?
My questions are stupid. Like
But what you're
I
doing,
always
no,
feel-
listen to yourself.
Yeah.
Listen to yourself. You're a ball of emotion
Uh-huh.
and you're a ball of feelings, you know, and you
Yeah.
keep repeating the same thing. So you
yeah.
haven't heard yet.
Mhm.
You have to keep hearing.
Okay.
Just keep hearing and keep taking prasadam, and eventually you'll get it. But you're not going to be able to get it by intellectual reasoning. You're frustrated because you're trying to experience by intellectual reasoning, and you can't understand it by intellectual reasoning.
Yeah.
You can't understand it with here is knowledge,
Okay.
humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness among pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, Krishna, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization and philosophical truth, philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be, is ignorance. So this is the process for getting out of the confusion. It's the process for getting out of the entanglement of the actions and reactions of material nature, the modes of nature. The soul is different from the modes of nature. The soul is not the body. But as long as we're thinking that we're the body, and that material nature is reality, and the only reality, then we can't look forward. We can't go forward. We can't want to go forward. That's why it says here, philosophical search for the absolute truth. So it's good, you're nice, you're a sincere person, and you want to know more and everything, but you have to learn the art of inquiry. You know, take your Bhagavad-gita,
Okay.
chapter 4, verse 34, and you read it out loud to us. 4:34. Chapter 4, verse 34. Okay, now read the verse. Chapter 4, verse 34.
Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service unto him. The realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth.
So there's the process. You have to inquire what you're doing, but you have to inquire submissively, and you have to serve.
How would asking submissively look like? Because I'm not there yet.
You are inquiring.
Okay.
So now read the purport.
The path of spiritual realization is undoubtedly difficult. The Lord therefore advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line of discipline succession from Lord himself. No one can be a bona fide spiritual master without following the principle of spiritual succession. The Lord is the original spiritual master, and a person in the discipline succession can convey the message of the Lord as it is to his disciple. No one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process.
No, not one. Say that again.
No one
can be spiritually
realized by
manufacturing his own process. So,
okay.
yeah, go next. Next.
As is the fashion of the foolish pretenders. The Bhagavad-gita says, the path of religion is directly enunciated by the Lord. Therefore, mental speculation or dry arguments cannot help lead one.
Mental speculation or dry arguments cannot lead one to
the right path. I
Yes.
hope I wasn't doing that, by the way. I'm just really curious.
Keep on going.
Okay. Nor by independent study of books or knowledge can one progress in spiritual life. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master to receive knowledge. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender, and one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper
combination for spiritual understanding. Read that again.
Okay. Inquiries and submission.
Inquiring and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding.
Okay.
Go ahead. A little more.
Unless there is submission and service, inquirers from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. One must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master, and when he sees genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. In this verse, both blind following and observed inquiry.
Did you hear that? Read that again. Read that again. In this verse, blind acceptance and absurd inquiry.
How do we know when we're asking?
You know. That's why you said, I think I'm my answer. This question is you know. All of us know. So you have to learn how to inquire first.
Okay. So yeah, I'm just so confused because they're talking so much about personal and impersonal, and I don't really understand that. And so, but not to I just absorb.
You have to become qualified to understand it.
Okay.
You have to become qualified. How do you become qualified to understand it? By hearing submissively in the mood of service. And you have to want to know.
Yeah.
Like really intensely, you have to want to know, to the point where you will do the needful to get it. Not that you really don't want to change and you won't change. And there's a very important part here. Keep going.
Okay. Not only should one hear submissively from the spiritual master.
Not only should one hear submissively but the spiritual master, but
one must also get a clear understanding from him.
But one must also get a clear understanding from him. So he may be saying something to you very clearly, and you're not understanding. You're confused. Yeah. So then you have to continue to inquire until it becomes clear.
Okay.
It's not enough to just say, well, I'm confused because I hear about spiritual and I hear about personal and I hear about impersonal and I'm confused. The analysis in the chapter was very clear. what the difference from between personal and impersonal is. But that means you're hearing, you haven't heard yet, you're beginning to hear.
It hasn't like...
Yes, the light hasn't gone up, the penny hasn't
like,
dropped.
you know,
Ding, you know,
Yeah.
bing, you know, the light. But when it goes off,
yeah.
then you'll begin to understand. And then at some point, you surrender. And when you surrender, see, the material process is you argue, and then you surrender. But the spiritual process is you surrender, and then you hear, and then you get it. You can't get it by arguing.
Oh,
Because
I
it's
arguing.
no,
Or did it come
no,
across like
no, I don't mean arguing, not like that. But arguing means by the process of your intellectual, your subtle body to speculate and understand. You can't get it by that process.
Okay.
You can't get spiritual understanding by that process.
Because it will never stop.
Yeah, but the
monism, maybe?
Yeah, because they were saying
Here.
something about
I got it.
monism being agnostic and then
I already
atheist,
took a picture of it.
isn't
Impersonal.
monism?
It says those who always try to establish the doctrine of monism. That's what we read tonight. When yesterday we were asking about monism.
yes,
It says those who try to establish the doctrine of monism are also counted among the atheists and agnostics.
Well, that's impersonalist, right?
monotheistic.
That would
There's a
mon-
difference between monism
Yeah, that means impersonal.
and monotheistic.
Oh.
Monotheistic means there's one God,
exactly.
but he's personal.
And
And monism means we're all God, there's only one.
And that's an impersonal
Yes.
philosophy.
Yes, it means we're all one.
Yeah.
You know, the only reason we think that we're different is because we are covered by illusion.
Right.
But when we become uncovered by illusion, then we'll realize that we're all one. But the defect of that philosophy is, if we actually are all one, and if one of us become liberated, then all of us would become liberated. Because we're one.
Yeah.
You know, they say the drop of water enters into the ocean and becomes the ocean. But the drop of water never becomes the ocean. It's illogical. So if you follow that, if you have heard that philosophy, and this is the problem you have, because you've heard that philosophy submissively, and it's in there, and it's very difficult to get rid of.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to cross over to understand that everything isn't one, or that it's one and it's different at the same time. The sun is in the sky. It's one thing, but it's everywhere by its energy, by light and heat. It's everywhere. So the sun is both one and it's diffused everywhere. You define the sun in terms of the sun globe and the heat and the light. There are three things. But you never see the sun without heat and light, and you never see heat and light without the sun. They're one. It's one unit, one thing. So God is the source of everything, and all the energies that we see are transformations of His own energy, including us.
Yeah.
Therefore we are one, and we are different. We are one with God, we're one in quality with God, we're conscious, He's conscious. But our consciousness is infinitesimal, and His consciousness is infinite. That's the difference.
That makes sense, yeah.
So we just keep hearing it, and you might forget. You'll go back, and then tomorrow you'll ask the same question. But I'm hearing about personal and impersonal, and I don't
It's
understand.
Like, I'm longing to have that personal connection to God, but I'm also wondering inside, how would that feel like? Or like,
You can
how would it be
no.
different, God?
No.
Like, just show me through experience. 'Cause
Yeah,
it
therefore
makes me-
go to the deity and talk to Him.
Yeah. I did.
Go to the deity. Look in the eye of the deity. I said this to John, and it was very effective. Look at the eye of the deity and don't look away.
Okay.
Just look in the eye of the deity and give your heart, and don't look away. It's very difficult to look into the eyes of the deity and not look away.
Is it the
Very powerful.
upstairs? Is
What?
it the black one? There's many. Which one? Which one is
Any
it?
one of them,
Any one of them. Okay.
but particularly the big black one.
Okay, I'll do that.
Because he's the source of everything else. He's the source of all other forms and everything.
And once you realize that you don't feel spiritually hungry, because I feel like always spiritually hungry, but you're saying once you realize that you don't feel that anymore.
You're always spiritually hungry.
But no, but he said that once you said that once you have that
You
knowledge,
feel you're no longer looking for the truth. You found the truth,
oh, wow.
but your hankering for more of the truth is still there.
Oh.
But it's not. It doesn't make you feel dissatisfied. But now the hungering makes you feel dissatisfied.
So we found prasadam, we just got to keep taking prasadam.
Yeah, we got to keep filling her with prasadam. You dance and chant and take prasadam and worship the deity. Beautiful flower, pluck it and put it in front of the deity and offer it to the deity.
Mm-hmm.
This is the process. And then you'll understand gradually by reciprocation with God from within and without, and the deity and the devotees and the script, everything together will gradually teach you, and they will give you that experience of what is a difference between personal and impersonal.
Yeah, I think that makes more sense. Like I have to experience it inside of myself instead of asking what is someone else's experience, because that's not.
See, you may ask me, what have you experienced? You're the guru. But if I tell you I've experienced everything, what's your qualification for understanding that? Or what's your No, listen, I'm just listen.
Okay.
You get so wound up in your emotion, you forget, you don't hear anymore. Just listen.
I'm embarrassed.
If you ask me whether I'm seeing God or I've experienced God, and if I say yes, then
And I'll be in awe.
yeah, but you don't. It's just sentiment. You have no way of testing that. You can't see what I'm seeing. I can't see what you're seeing.
Yeah.
So it's not like that. Okay, if you tell me that you've seen God, therefore I'll surrender to you. No. You hear the scripture, hear God's words coming from the lips of someone who is convinced, and that changes the heart.
Mm-hmm.
They say that to me. You know, not that I'm anybody special. I'm not. I'm a fool and a little tiny speck in the universe. But they say to me, all the people that are coming over the last, I don't know how many years, when I read, it's different. They have the reading group, they keep going on a reading, and it's not quite the same because I've been doing it for a very long time, and I'm convinced. And I hear Krishna all the time when I read these books.
Wow.
I'm with Krishna all the time when I read these books. Therefore, I can't get enough of it. I don't go out and do this. I go back and I hear something else, and I keep hearing. And then, and when you do that all the time, then Krishna reciprocates from within your heart, and he gives you the realization. That's personal.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Okay, now I've got to say, oh yes, Hannah, one more thing.
I don't understand Radharani's relationship with Krishna.
You can't understand at this point Radharani's relationship with Krishna.
Why
It is very confidential.
Mm.
You can't understand now at this point in your spiritual development. So don't worry about it.
Well, can you at least tell me why she is with him on altar? I understand.
Because Radharani and Krishna are the same soul.
Mm.
They're consort. She's his consort.
What's consort?
Consort means the female energy of a male. Consort. That means consort. So she is eternally his consort. She is his pleasure potency. She is the source of pleasure potency.
Is that sexual pleasure potency? Does that mean?
It's sexual, but it's not like sexual here.
Okay.
There doesn't have to be the gross things that go on, because the bodies in the spiritual world have the potency to experience everything through every part of the body.
And through their eyes.
Through their eyes. Yes.
Or her hearing
Yes.
his words. It's the same.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And because they together are the supreme absolute truth, even though he's the source of her, But together, and then Lord Chaitanya, when he comes, he's Radha and Krishna in the same form.
Oh, and so whenever he's Radha and Krishna in the same form, is his parts of sympathy more of like the female energy?
Yes.
His parts
Yes. He's Krishna with the complexion and the mood of Radharani. Just like the female, in the material world, the female nature is, like you said, compassionate, it's nourishing, it's accommodating, it's giving, it's different than the male energy. And now in the material world, everything is chaos because they're all trying to make everybody one. And they're so crazy that they're having, operations to change their organs so that they can think that they're the other sex. It's become so, and Prabhupada explained this to us, why this is. Because the soul is getting attached to the opposite sex. And then when it leaves the body, it goes into the opposite sex. So it's going back and forth between male and female and male and female, and the body, the subtle body, the mind, the subtle body, is confused. After a lot of times, it becomes confused. It comes into a male body, but it has a female mind, and it's confused.
So for example,
because all the impressions of our experiences that we've had in this material world are all stored up in the subtle body. The subtle body stays with us when we go from one body to another. The subtle body carries the soul from one body to another. And that subtle body is the mental construction, the mental condition that we're in when we leave our body, that carries us into our next gross physical body. So if you keep going back and forth and even into different species, then the mind will, sometimes want to fly. And therefore we make airplanes and we do all these different things and jump out of windows with, flaps, and we now we go up in the air in one of these gliders, and or jump out of a, thing with a parachute, and
jump out of it.
yeah, or and if we don't like the person, we cut the strings in the parachute, and that's it,
Oh goodness.
Oh my god.
That's the material world stuff.
That's the material world stuff.
So
It's important that we know the material world stuff. And we know that the material world stuff is preventing us from having the spiritual experience.
So you said before, this is not my question. You said before that we cannot remember our past lives or anything without only Krishna can remember those things or knows those things. Whenever we are fully surrendered and our soul goes back to Krishna, do we remember our experiences in the material world so that we know that we do not yearn to go back?
Why should you want to?
True, but we left before, so is that a desire that comes up again?
It can, but it doesn't. It's not mechanical. It's not a mathematical formula. We are, by constitution, a part of Krishna. And Krishna is supremely independent. So we have a little tiny part of that independence. And he can't misuse his independence, because his independence is complete. If he wants something, he just thinks about it, and all the energies that exist work to fulfill that energy. There's no impediment to his fulfilling his desires. But we have a little tiny pinch, a tiny particle of that independence. And therefore we have the ability to choose to be with him or not. Once we've tasted the material energy and we go back to the spiritual world, it's highly unlikely that we will. Highly unlikely. It's possible. But sometimes Krishna makes arrangements because he wants to fight with somebody. And he can't fight with anybody in the material world because we're too puny. So he'll arrange for one of his eternal associates to come into the material world just to fight him, to give him a good fight. because he has that spirit. Everything that's here is there in the spiritual world. But there it's complete, and here it's just a reflection, it's a shadow. The material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. But it's a shadow reflection. It's temporary. All the forms are temporary. We have the same relationships, we have the same everything, but it's temporary, therefore it can't satisfy us. Therefore the Vedas come and Krishna comes to explain these things to us, so we can go back to him and actually enjoy. We can't enjoy separate from Krishna. It's not possible. We're constitutionally part of Krishna. That's our nature. Therefore, we're always trying to find love, we're always trying to find relationships, we're always trying to avoid death, we're always trying to avoid old age, we're trying to, avoid getting fat and getting old and all these things. There's billion-dollar industries now that people try to stop these things from happening, but we can't. It goes on, but they're thinking, yes, we will overcome it by this science or medical or this or that other thing. But it's a part. It's a part of material nature. You can't change material nature. You can't change the laws of God because they're His. Just like if you own something, you can do what you want with it. If you own a car and you got the pink slip and you've paid for it completely, you can run out of a cliff if you want to. You drop out of a building. Boom. Okay. That's how I get my pleasure. Because it belongs. Because it belongs to you. Because it belongs to you. But if you drop somebody else's, car off the cliff, then you're in trouble. If you haven't paid for it altogether and it still belongs to the bank and you do that, then you're in trouble. You're incarcerated, or you're in a debtor's prison, or you have to pay a bunch of,
Shouldn't have done it anyway because it was Christian's car to begin with.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's a separate thing. But that's the difference. If you actually own something, that you can keep it and you can do whatever you want with it. So Krishna owns everything. We don't own anything. And once we realize that, then we can want to go back with Krishna. We can use everything in Krishna's service, and then everything becomes alive. It makes sense. It gives satisfaction even to the senses. There's a difference when you take prasadam. There's a difference when you dance and chant together in front of the deities. It's different than going to a disco and looking at everybody up and down and undressing them with your imagination, and that's what everybody's doing. That's what they're doing. That's all they're doing. That's what it's about. And therefore they're all suffering like dogs and cats. The questions coming?
It was just it's a very simple question. Then why do we work?
Because you have to. There's a question coming from cyberspace. Then why do we work? Because you have to. You don't have any choice. You have to eat. Even the bums on the street, they have to work. They have to put what they give them into their mouth and chew and swallow. They're doing something. That's work. You cannot maintain the body without work. Karma jayo yakarmana. Krishna says, Sharira yatra pichate na prasidya karmanaha. So learn these books. Learn these books. Sharira yatra pichate na prasidya karmana. You can't even maintain the body without work. Therefore, everyone is doing some kind of work. So you work because you have to. Because you can't live without working. That's the way it's created. And you can't change the way it's created because you didn't create it. Krishna created it. Okay? Now I've got to rest my voice. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad-gita ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you.